2024. Official records indicate that 5.28% of Florida's population have Italian surnames or identify as Italian. That's 1,200,000 people who share Italian heritage in the Sunshine State. When you adjust the numbers for the seasonal snowbirds who spend part of their year in Florida, the Italian population increases. And there are thousands and thousands of Italian restaurants in Florida. Seriously though, Italians have a long history in Florida. When Juan Ponce de Leon, the explorer who searched for the Fountain of Youth, entered Tampa Bay in May of 1513, his flagship was captained by Italian-born Giovanni Bono. A few years later, in 1539, Hernando de Soto, another Spanish explorer, had 4 Italians in his company of 600 men when he also explored Tampa Bay. One was a captain of a ship, another a doctor, and 2 others were ordinary sailors. For 3 centuries after the glittering cavalcade of de Soto had faded into history, Tampa Bay remained a remote and forgotten harbor. Only the seagulls and Indian canoes were seen upon the lonely water. It was in 1824 that Americans built a stronghold called Fort Brooke in the Tampa Bay area. The small fort was startled into action on December 28, 1835, when the Seminole Indians took to the warpath. During the bloody 7-year struggle, 2 names of Italian origin became linked with Tampa history. On March 26, 1836, Major Lawrence Taliaferro reported that he repelled a band of Indians concealed in a hammock within the present-day city limits of Tampa. Administering to the sick and wounded was a surgeon of Italian heritage with the name of Dr. L.J. Trotti. In the 1880s, Italian immigrants often landed in New Orleans, but some came to Florida to find work in cigar factories, sugar cane plantations, and by laboring to build the Sugar Cane Railroad. Disillusioned by the fact that the streets were not actually paved with gold, these early immigrants had to rely on the belief in pane e lavoro, bread and hard work, to create their own wealth. Then, in 1891, despicable racist lynchings of 11 innocent Italians in New Orleans caused heightened violence against all Italians in the city, and many Italians fled south to Florida, particularly Tampa. When they arrived, they quickly realized 3 things. First, the streets were not paved with gold. Second, the streets were not paved at all. And third, they were expected to pave them. But once again, hard-working Italian laborers set to work and got the job done. Once in Tampa, many Italians sought work in the thriving Cuban cigar-making industry. Immigrants could originally only find employment in the lowest-paid position of tobacco stripper. This position was considered the most demeaning as it required nimble hands to repeatedly tear out the stem from thousands of tobacco leaves. For those who could not find jobs in the cigar factories, they were forced to work labor-intensive jobs, usually in farming or construction. The men who found work in factories would obtain lower-rung positions and toil until they gained enough capital to open a business such as a grocery store or cafe. The women would claim positions as tobacco strippers or on the cigar rolling benches, earning income for their families. Women would stay in these positions much longer, thus making them an important part of the infamous cigar factory strikes. Many Italian women were seen on the picket lines of the cigar factory strikers, and along with their co-workers, were vocal about wanting to improve wages and working conditions for all. During a strike in 1901, several Italian women were arrested outside of a cigar factory while trying to prevent strikebreakers from crossing the picket lines. As time went on, young Italian men would begin to learn the art of rolling cigars from their Cuban neighbors. Whether through apprenticeships or by casual instructions after the workday was done, some Italian men would eventually move on to own and run successful cigar factories. One of these Italian cigar factory owners would be Valentine M. Antuono. Cultivating his skills from working on the cigar benches for 15 years, Antuono created one of the most successful cigar companies in Tampa, the CHS brand. Antuono began making and selling cigars out of his family-owned grocery store and then moved to a small spot on Kennedy and Tampa streets, historically known as Val's Corner. Through his success, he would eventually move his business into the large West Tampa Cigar Factory building, once located at 1316 Spring Street. When Sicilian immigrants first arrived in Tampa, they immediately began to carve out a little piece of Ybor City for themselves. They settled in a small spot around 7th Avenue and 18th Street, which was initially called La Pasciata, after the Cuban landlord who rented the area. As more Sicilian immigrants stopped immigrating back to Italy and began investing in Ybor City, this area grew and would become known as Tampa's Little Italy. Italian immigrants were able to pay off their homes, initially leased by Vincente Ybor, and invested in real estate to establish Italian-owned businesses and farms. For those Italians who sought economic prosperity outside of the cigar factory industry, many went on to establish fish markets, saloons, cafes, and over 50 grocery stores. These businesses catered not only to their fellow Italians, but to the local Cuban and Spanish workers who were important to their communities. Other entrepreneurs would bring new industries to Ybor City through the creation of several macaroni factories and successful farms. Produce and dairy farms would become a successful trade for Italian immigrants and would eventually create another booming industry under the names of the Cosmopolitan Ice Company and the Tropical Ice Cream Company. Modeling after their Cuban neighbors, the Sicilian settlers started their own mutual aid society in Little Italy. Due to the negative connotations that were circulating in Tampa about the Sicilian Mafia, Tampa's Sicilian immigrants decided to establish their mutual aid society as Italian, thus being known as L'Unione Italiana. The Italian Club was established in 1894, the second mutual aid society in Tampa's history. When the club started, it had 116 Italian members and 8 Spanish members. Today, people of Italian heritage have spread throughout Florida and have made a lasting impact on the state. On the West Coast, the cities of Naples and Venice are named after their Italian counterparts, and you can find people of Italian heritage in almost every region of Florida. In fact, Governor Ron DeSantis is proud of his Italian heritage, as his ancestry traces back to Abruzzo and Molise. Truly, people of Italian ancestry have climbed from the lowest levels of Florida society to the pinnacles of achievement. Florida's beautiful and scenic State Highway A1A runs 340 miles along the ocean coast from the Georgia border all the way to Key West. Midway along that ocean route, you'll approach the aptly named Treasure Coast of Florida, which passes through Indian River, Martin, and St. Lucie counties. Centuries before us, this locale was the setting for the wreck of treasure-laden Spanish fleets, pirate attacks, and ultimately in the 1960s, the discovery and retrieval of the vast sunken treasures found beneath the Atlantic's waves. In the early 1700s, Spanish treasure ships followed the Florida coast north from Havana on their return to Spain. These ships had come from Spain carrying European-made trade goods to barter with the natives of Mexico and South America in return for silver and gold, which was greatly undervalued by the indigenous people. Using the port of Veracruz in Mexico, other ships picked up goods the Spanish had acquired from the Orient. Meeting in Havana, a flotilla of 7 of these treasure ships set off for Spain in July 1715. Even though they knew it was hurricane season, they were eager to get underway, and the weather that July was perfect. A few days later, however, they were caught in a terrible storm coming from the southeast. All but one of the ships were wrecked off the coast of Florida, sinking with literally millions of dollars in gold, silver, copper, jewels and gems, and oriental treasures. Most aboard the ships were killed, but 1,500 survivors made it to shore near the present-day town of Sebastian in Indian River County. They sent for help from the Spanish settlement at St. Augustine, and eventually salvage and recovery efforts began, returning only a fraction of the total treasure, but nevertheless a sizable amount of gold and silver. Word of the disaster spread, and English pirates soon came to plunder what the Spanish had recovered. Once again, the Spanish lost their treasures. No further efforts were made to recover the rest of the cargo, and the tragedy and the treasure were slowly forgotten. Nearly 2.5 centuries had passed when the modern-day beach walker turned treasure salver, Kip Wagner, would chance upon strange, flat black rocks on his morning beach walks with his dog. As he began cleaning one of them, he brought back the ghost of the legendary 1715 Spanish fleet. He had found a silver coin from the wreck. He wondered if more could be found and fashioned a surfboard with a plexiglass window, which he paddled offshore looking for treasure. He also started researching and discovered the story of the 1715 Spanish fleet, and he became sure that more treasure was to be found. He started to find more coins, and he resolved to find the treasure by calling in friends from as far as California to dive the reefs. They formed a pact and agreed to search for 1 year. Week after week, they dove with no success. Amazingly, with one last week left to their agreement, a diver came across an area of the seabed carpeted with glittering gold coins. They had found the treasure and hit the jackpot. As usual, the government claimed that the state of Florida owned the treasure, but after a battle in the courts, the divers won ownership of their discoveries. Part of the treasure is on display at the McClarty Treasure Museum in Sebastian, Florida. You can even purchase individual gold pieces, which have been scrupulously cataloged and studied. When I was there, I saw a gentleman plunk down $15,000 cash for just one gold coin. My jaw dropped, and the small mermaid trinket I purchased for my wife for $150 seemed so unimportant. But the mermaid was authentically made from copper ingots that went down with the fleet. It is now housed in my wife's jewelry box. She didn't care for it and never even wears it. Occasionally, I take it out and use it as a good luck charm when I play poker. It doesn't really work. Well, anyway, that's why this area of Florida has been named the Treasure Coast. This is what it's like to walk on the beach here around 9 a.m. in the morning. Take a look at this. This is what you see. Beautiful beach, beautiful ocean, very calm today. The beautiful sun shining, reflecting on the ocean so beautiful. Very few people out here, just enjoying the solitude and the beautiful sea. Come down to the beach with us. There's some interesting things I want you to see.
West Palm is an hour from home.
Jamaica.
It is so beautiful here.
Jamaica.
So clear, so wonderful. Especially if it's down.
penso che il sogno così non ritorni mai più. Mi leggevo le mani le pagine blu. Poi improvviso venivo dal vento rapido e mi mangiavo a volare nel cielo infinito.
Stai lassù e volavo felice impiegato dal sole ed ancora più su nel fiume con cambiare spariva lontano laggiù una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me. Volavo felice impiegato dal sole ed ancora più su nel fiumato campiero sparivo lontano laggiù una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me. Felice di stare lassù nel blu, dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù.
Corre, corre ingrato, e più la tua vita mia. Tutto è passato e non ci pensi più. Corre, corre ingrato, sei per la tua vita mia. Tutto è passato e non ci pensi